Thanks, everybody. Hi, everyone. Microphone here. Good. My name is Anna. I'm really happy to be here. Actually, one of the things that I started thinking about since Chris first said that science moves faster than IT, I thought about, well, and in fact, IT moves even faster than mindset. And that's the thing that we're all having a really hard time changing. So I did a ML workshop at the very beginning of this conference. And just so you know, anybody who shows up at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday for an AI workshop, those are the people you have to hire and or promote and or, like get to run companies because they were a dedicated bunch. And a lot of them were really talking about, hey, please help me actually change the mindset of my organization. Help me actually, get management to understand that this is a research focused area. And it's that mindset that we really have to focus on. But before we focus on mindset, I really want to give myself credibility and just to let you know that I've been counting colonies since forever. So science is really in my blood. It's something that I grew up around, and I really love science from the bottom of my heart. But I've really come to see it in a lot of different ways throughout my life and throughout the time that I've had the opportunity to do different things in science and how we can actually accelerate science. And this is why I love BioTeam, because we think about the actual way we accelerate science, right? And the thing that I thought was really interesting to talk about in this in today's sort of 10 minutes that I have is actually focus around a social problem that we have. And the social problem that we have is our push towards polarity, right? We see this in a lot of places in our lives where it's sort of become a dichotomy of left or right, A or B, and we're being pushed in these opposing forces. And it's really stopping the ability of us to progress. But actually, I think that what I'm really good at and sort of the capability I bring is the ability to sort of handle and wrestle with those opposing forces and actually combine them together to drive change, right? So the ability to take those opposing views as a leader within your strategy and to then use them, sort of bring them together and really supercharge wherever you're actually going. And I think at its core, that's what AI strategy is. You have to take these opposing things that are happening in the field and sort of work as a leader with both of those things and still move your organization forward. Okay, so one of the first things that I want to talk about sort of as a dichotomy of AI is I want to have an example of DALL-E, which is essentially an algorithm that takes text that any user can input. So you can go freely and input any text you want, and it generates an image for you, which I think is amazing if you think about it, because first it has to understand human language, right? It has to understand what a GPU chip in the form of an avocado is as digital art, and then it has to create it from its ability to sort of pull images together. And you think, hey, that's not bad, right? Those NLP capabilities, we're really going places. But then someone else suggests emotional baggage, and this is what you get, right? So you can see that on the one hand, AI is really kicking it, right? But on the other hand, it's really sort of missing the mark. And that's totally fine. AI is both underrated and overrated at the same time. We can live with that. Last year, Fernanda told us that, AI is mostly for research. Yeah, that's true. AI is not going to cure cancer. Also true. But why are we asking AI to cure cancer? There's so many awesome things that ML can do for us in our labs right now that we're not taking advantage of, right? There's those low-hanging fruit that our scientists can use right now. Bruno and I did a demo at our ML workshop of things that we can do for image segmentation. You guys need to do it, right? Image search and processing, speech and text mining, excellent. I'm a big fan of AlphaFold. Adam and I are going to have to fight. Yeah. So we have to take advantage of those easy wins. And we also have to not overinvest in those unrealistic expectations. Yeah, awesome expectations. Let's start moving there, but that's not where you need to be throwing your money. So that's my sort of first challenge. And the second one is that AI is going to require more and less human at the same time. The place where we need way less human is in the things that machines can do so much better than us. Large computation, automation, so many scientific workflows are really missing the places where automation can save us a lot of hassle and a lot of errors. Let's put the machines and machine learning algorithms and let them do those things. Segment eye images, trace cells. Our scientists don't need to be doing that. But you know where we need more human? We need more human in owning that mindset. And that's what Matter was talking about. That mindset is the thing that's actually going to help us develop the AI further. And it's actually a really big ask, because when we think about our mindset, we have to think about ethics, right? And the question is really, whose ethics? Because I think I have great ethics, like they should let me design that stuff, right? But then you may not agree. And so the ethics of who? Of our corporations, the ethics of the biomedical community, the ethics of government. If you look outside of here at the Supreme Court, we see the consequences of letting a homogenous group of people make decisions about us and what we should be ethically doing with ourselves. And that's what's going to happen with AI and ML. I mean, more specifically AI, but that's all words. Not important words, because we know what we're doing, right? And I really want to call industry out on this. And I know that we have a lot of industry and a lot of vendors. What I see happen is a lot of industry sort of plays both sides of the ethics field. On the one hand, they're in the room where we're talking about ethics and we're sort of making these decisions. But on the other hand, they invest a lot of money in lobbying against those ethics because it's not really profitable and it sort of goes against IP in some ways. And we have to really sort of hold each other accountable, because I really believe that ethical AI is going to be really beneficial to all of us. And then the next thing that we have to sort of understand the dichotomy of is that, yeah, it's awesome to have some, AI cowboy write in and sort of like save the day, right, and cure all of your company ills. But that's not necessarily what's going to work for you. There's an importance of team dynamics, but also obviously AI talent, right? You can't have nobody who understands what they're doing, but you also can't pretend like this one person is going to save your organization. And I think all four of us have said this, and I know that like Bio Team goes really hard on this. Like, let your teams form and start working together. Build those common languages. I think last year we said that data commons is fundamentally a language building exercise, right? Like, we have to understand the words that we're all speaking to each other, and that takes time. We worked with some sort of large collaborations between scientists and sort of IT, and they said it took them a year just to start to understand each other. A year of the collaboration just to learn to listen to each other. But it's fine, because in AI, it's the sort of like slow ramp up to start a large acceleration phase at the end. So let people do that. And then diversity is like so important. And it goes back to the ethics, right? The more diverse your groups, the more diverse the ethical considerations of your AI and algorithm. And then the two dystopias where every organization sort of lives at right now, they are data hoarding and they're so data fearing at the same time. It's like they want all the data, but they're also dying under all the data, but they want more. And so, like I've also given this advice, and we have this concept of data as an asset. And to me, this is so important, because I think that when we say data is an asset, we make it feel like data is like something tangible or mathematical, something that we can like, even our data management terminology makes it seem like data is something that we can manage. And it's not. Data is like an energy. It's like the force of your organization. And you should have it flow in your organization the way energy would flow. You would never put energy in a box and have it stay there and expect to harness its power. Energy's power is harnessed when it flows, right? And your data management has to be those guardrails and those hallways through which that data can flow, because you have to have regulation. Otherwise, energy is not contained in its chaos. But you can't keep it in one place. Keeping it in one place, it rots, right? So we worked with an organization that had 25 petabytes of data, and 16 of it was just sitting there, literally rotting. Not only is it unsustainable, but it's just like sad, right? And so, yeah, that's not what we need to do. We need to change the way we think about how our data moves. And my favorite topic, just because it's like so dimensionally complex, and my favorite things are like the most complex things, is this explainable AI. On a very serious note, like on a very practical note, if your organization doesn't have a source of truth for your data, things are not going to go well, right? So you have to trust your data in order to trust your algorithm, in order to explain your algorithm. And this opacity is especially problematic when we're talking about clinical care, because in clinical care, that's just not going to work out for you. But what does it actually mean to trust our algorithms, right? Like, what does it actually mean to understand our algorithms? Understanding of AI is incredibly different than understanding of statistics, of mathematics, because it has very different components that underlie it. And we have this idea in our minds that at some point we're going to understand AI in the same way we understand each other, which is so excellent, right? Like, we all understand ourselves and each other, and that's just not going to happen. Trust in AI is a social construct. My favorite thing to say is that trust is just a risk, and it's masquerading as a promise. But at the same time, it's the key to successful AI. And that's like a really weird concept to hold in your head, but it's really true. And trust really differs. It differs not only on your domain expertise, right? If you're a lay person or you're a technical person, but also, I'm sorry, on your technical expertise, but also on your domain knowledge, whether you're a scientist, engineer, or whoever you are. And we just really have to be realistic with ourselves about what it means to trust our algorithms. And then this, I think, is actually really simple to implement in your organization, but it's very often missed. Your AI question should be meaningful, but you can't ask AI to be a crystal ball and explain all of your organization's sort of missed opportunities to you, right? It has to be meaningful enough to justify the investment, because you're going to have to go to your leadership. You're going to have to ask for money for long-term investment. You can't just say, oh, I just need to know, a very simple question. So there has to be meaning behind it. But the scope can be very easily undone by the complexity of your question, and it doesn't need to be. So we have to ask meaningful questions, but we can't just let it be a compute engine, but we also can't ask it to be a crystal ball. And what I love to say is, like, find joy in the achievable of machine learning, but don't use that as an excuse to just do nothing. And I love this concept of, like, because I didn't even do a slide about what is AI. I hate slides that are what is AI, because honestly, it doesn't really matter. But the way that I really like to explain it is like, okay, we have our sort of like sphere of the things that we know and we understand biologically, right? And it's sort of the knowledge graph of human understanding. And then beyond that, we have things that have very few connections in our brain, things we really don't understand. We don't really like know what they go to. And AI is the thing that expands our boundary of the things we know. It creates those connections for us that we can, in our minds, then understand and absorb into our knowledge graph of human understanding. And there was somebody who told me one time that essentially AI is creating a global ordered database of knowledge. And if you spell that out, it's GOD. So it's sort of like our holistic understanding of like, what is the world, right? I don't know. And you can't put that on a slide. So yeah. And there's something that I love, and I thought that everybody knew this fable, but apparently not. Does anybody know the toad and the scorpion? Okay. My colleagues apparently don't. So I put this story on there, but the idea is essentially that a scorpion wants to go across the river, and the toad says, I'm not going to take you because you'll sting me. And the scorpion says, no, of course I would. And if I sting you, we both die. And the frog's like, okay, that sounds reasonable. So they go across the river, and what does the scorpion do? It stings the toad. And as they're both sinking, the toad says, why did you sting me? And the scorpion says, well, I couldn't help myself. It's in my nature. And there are just certain things that are in the nature of AI that I feel like we are like hoping to engineer out of it, and we're never going to. And unless you accept these things as part of your sort of like organizational understanding, then you're going to be really in deep trouble. So things like data doesn't equal reality, right? Like whatever data sample you have doesn't mean that that's going to scale out to other places, other patients. It doesn't mean that your data equals reality. Correlation is not causation. The past will not equal the future. And my most sort of like the thing that drives me the craziest whenever somebody comes from a pharma company and says, oh, my algorithm told me that this is meaningful. I said, just because you find meaning in it doesn't make it meaningful. There are things that your algorithm would find that have nothing to do with actual reality. Okay. And then we go on to sort of leading transformation. And this to me is like so important. And it's the mindset. And Matter and I spent some time yesterday talking about this. As leaders, I think we're asking a lot of leaders these days, right? Like, so I know, like, for example, Ari just got us through the pandemic. Other leaders have gotten their companies through the pandemic, and now they're like, okay, and now we have to digitally transform. Like, okay, come on now, right? Like, give us a break. But I think there's like a way to tap into leadership that is different than sort of this burden of unmet expectations, right? And I think it's a way of telling leaders that like their organization doesn't have to do it the way, and I think Adam hit on this, their organization doesn't have to do it the way any other organization does it. They have to do it in alignment to who their company is and with the purpose that drives them and their organization. And so yeah, follow good advice, but don't run your business like anybody else. Like when I come up here, I know I'm not going to be Dag, and I'm not ever going to pretend to be Dag, but also I'm Anna, and that is like great. So And I want our leaders to own their organization the same way, right? Like, I'm not Amazon, but I'm Recursion or I'm Roche, and like, that's hot. So, right. And this is actually just a personal philosophy, but I think that this is really important when we talk about organizational change. And somebody gave me a game, and these were the instructions to the game, and these changed my life. So it said that there were 2 ways to play this game. One is to play safe, and one is play to grow. And the second is how you win. And I don't know, like, that did something to me. And I think that is the way that our organizations have to look at machine learning change and digital transformation change. And the one thing that I can always tell you is that change always exposes like the really messy parts of your organization. And that can seem scary. And sometimes it feels safer to just hold everything in this nice, clean container, like, oh, we're doing well enough. Why undergo all this mess and all this chaos? And I can tell you that there is also sort of something beautiful in uncovering the darker parts of what's going on in your organization, but only in order to drive, again, that change forward. And yeah, AI and the sort of drive towards machine learning could expose all those parts, all those places where your company is not really aligned, and that's okay. Sort of on a big topic that I have, like, that I really want to convey in machine learning is that just because we're all a little like disoriented about what's going on doesn't mean that we're on the wrong path. It doesn't mean we're lost. Change is hard, and if we just keep infusing more human into it, I know we'll get there. I also want to give everyone permission to stop moving fast and breaking things, okay? There's a lot of other ways that you can lead your organization, and you can go through these sort of on your own. And some closing thoughts. To me, this caption should have been Stan Gloss recording podcast and kicking, scientific, whatever. But some closing thoughts that I think are really, really important is to be you on purpose. Your organization should be doing what it needs to do on purpose. Always chase the right thing and conserve your energy. Even if you want a digital transformation, your energy is the biggest currency you have. Play it for the long game. If you're a leader like that, your organization will follow. And then something like AI will just be a natural outcropping of that mental shift. So that's the end.
I don't know what's after this. So, like, amazing talks. And I think probably you've noticed 2 things about why BioTeam is special. One is their approach is really kind of holistic. They treat the whole patient. And so thinking as much about the people and purpose as technology. But even more than that, I think you can feel the passion of every single person who spoke here, because they themselves are bringing their whole selves to this. And I just think that's amazing. And I just want to thank them for that. We ended up rushing through our time, and so officially we have no time left to have questions. I have a feeling that this group would be happy to sit here for a few more minutes if we're not going to get kicked out of the room. And so if anyone has some questions, either online or in-house, and someone at least has to have one question, because we have a special microphone.
It's the padded microphone.
Where's the, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It's not a trends if you don't get to throw the mic at someone.
There you go.
Right.
Did everyone sign the waiver before we do this?
Thank you for these insightful thoughts. Any thoughts on quantum computing? So we talked about all the trends and the look in the future, but I haven't seen the quantum computing there. So I don't know, like, if you have any comment on that.
So I'll say one, it hasn't become real in the world that I play in, but I don't play in the entire world. I think the only thing that's notable really is seeing D-Wave as a sponsor and having a booth this year. I think that might be the first time that one of the quantum companies has sort of showed up here. I don't know if I'm wrong, but it feels to me like we're really, really early on. It feels to me like it's a potential way to solve some of the really, really, really intractable problems, but it's not something I've run into yet at basically small pharma, big pharma, biotech, and even the .govs. I don't think we've seen a lot of that yet.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of initiative. I mean, maybe point HPCQS, it's a European initiative. We're trying to combine classical computing and quantum computing. I was at a Euro HPC 2 months back in Paris, and there's a lot of talks, but again, less access to be able to practice and see, but probably maybe in the next edition, that would be a good subject to cover. Thank you.
All right, who else wants the box?
Yeah.
Excellent.
No,
Oh, we got 2 of them now.
no questions from John.
Excellent. So could you elaborate on AI explainability? As far as I'm concerned, it's black magic in a black box. So how can you explain these networks of interconnected nodes and weights in a way that a human can understand?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things is like right now, a lot of people who talk about AI explainability think about it in essentially like an understanding of like the way that features are ranked, right? So like that this neural network or this random forest essentially rank these features as the highest ranking. And like as a physician, if you look at it and you say, oh, like the reason that I picked this therapy is because of blood clot risk or something, and then you sort of feel at ease with the fact that you understand why it explained itself the way that it did. But that's the conundrum, is that that's not actually the explainability of AI, right? And the way that it comes to its decisions is not in a statistical way. It's not like p-values that you can recalculate in any environment will give you the same answer. And so I think that there's going to be a huge struggle because of sort of our desire for explainability and also our complete lack of understanding of what that explainability should look like to the human person, and which human, to the patient, to the clinician, to the bioinformatician who's developing it, right, to the regulatory agent at the FDA who is going to have to at some point make a decision on it and probably has no idea what it means. So yeah, I think it's a whole thing.
Yeah, and I would just add that we can't just think about AI as just inputs and outputs. It'll have to mature to where we can sort of have a conversation with the AI and essentially ask it to explain itself. That's why I brought up the misunderstood teenager thing, because it's like a teenager can't explain itself either, right? And that's okay in some respects, but when things get serious, it's not. So it's a maturity kind of thing. I think AI will mature to the point where we can ask it to explain how it arrived at decisions, hopefully.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
All right. We threw the mic. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all very much for your time, and thanks to our speakers.